If you don't need the words, don't use them. And check and recheck your spelling and grammar. If you take a look on the other side of your blue sheet, there's another before and after example. And the first one is, it's a paragraph of the information. Bruce County 4-H life skills leaders and youth leaders should plan to attend a workshop on Saturday, March 3rd, 2007. It looks very much like the memo that we saw in the video, where all the information is there and you kind of have to hunt and peck and find it. So, you know, once again, put all the information up at the top. Remember, it's important to, you know, here's the date and time of a workshop. This is what's going to, you know, take place. This is the agenda. And when to register. Here's the date, and this is how we want you to register. I know I'd rather look at this, you know, than I start glazing over by around line 2. And you don't have to be afraid of bullets. You can use bullets. And you don't have to worry about the capitalization, and you don't have to worry about the punctuation. I know Microsoft Word automatically capitalizes your bullets when you put bullet points. Go back and change that.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to put you to work.
Because now you have to practice what you learned.
So, on the cream color sheet, there's a word versus word activity. Just either on your own or at your tables, feel free to talk amongst yourselves. See if you can come up with some alternative words that you can use for some of these that we see quite often, normally by the people who are really trying to impress us with how big a word they can use. So I'll come up with a more clear way that you can use that same thing. Yes? It can be more than one word. It can be a word or a phrase, whatever's going to get the message across clearly. Okay, so let's start taking a look at some of the options that we've come up with. You have the answer? All right. Okay, and just shout them out. What's another word for that you can use instead of accompany? Go with. Join? Yep. So, again, with all of these words, it depends on your audience whether they're going to be appropriate to use or not. It's just so many people fall in a trap of writing academically or writing formally that they don't slow down and think that they gotta switch gears because they're talking to somebody else. So that's what I always had a really hard problem with. Like, when I was in university and involved with the student union, I was the go-to person if we were writing a letter to the administration, as I could put big words in like you wouldn't believe. And so when I started learning clear language and recognizing the differences in the writing styles, it was a huge mind shift for me to realize, okay, I don't have to use these words all the time as long as my message is getting across and it's understood. I don't have to impress anybody at this point. So it's huge, and it takes a bit, so you just need to be aware of it. So after that little rant, what did we get for accomplish? Do. Yeah. Any other ideas? Complete? Yeah.
It depends on where you're using it, right?
Yeah. Like, how does it fit into the context is going to make a difference. So, additionally. Also, as well, plus. Yep. Going with the math theme, addition and plus. Advise. Help. Pardon me? Inform. Tell. Yep. With reference to. Regarding, about. Yeah, again, pick what's going to work for your audience. So, afford an opportunity. Yep. To give a chance or to give. Provide, allow. Yep. So, in the event. If. How easy was that? If it snows, the school will be closed. So, at the present time. Now.
Commence. Begin. Yep. Remain. Disseminate. Share. Yep. Consequently. Because. As a result. Failed to. Or didn't or did not, depending on.
You are able to use contractions.
We can?
Remember who your audience is. If you're working with learners, it's not something you might want to do with funders who expect a certain level of formality. But if you're using a less formal method of communication, an email to a colleague, use the contraction. Because we don't say, well, I did not go to the grocery store on the way home. I didn't stop at the grocery store on the way home. Write the way you talk. Have it more conversational. It will be more engaging and more effective communication.
Utilized. Approximately. About. Yeah.
Yep.
Assist. Conclude. Yeah. Cooperate. Work together. Yep. Demonstrate. Endeavor. Exhibit. Facilitate. Support. Help. Yep. Depends on the verb of it and how you're using it. Has the capability. Can. And how fitting. Terminate. You guys are rock stars. Maybe. Next. Okay. So keeping in mind, is there power in the unwritten word? Yeah. Keeping your writing short and clear and concise makes your information easier to remember and to understand, right? You know, you're going to remember something that was, pretty quick and flash, like a TV commercial for Nike. You remember, just do it. If they had a 30-second spot of paragraphs and paragraphs of everything, you would have gone, I don't know who it is and I don't care.
I'm thirsty.
Yeah. So statements from history that are remembered are not famous because of the situation, but because they're brief and powerful. So, you guys have all the answers, so it's not as much fun, but. Admiral, I will not accede to your suggestion and offer terms that I should surrender my ship. And although your forces have me in a perilous grip, I wish to state without reservation that I have heretofore only prepared to engage you in battle. Okay, I'm done.
Sirs, I have not yet begun
sorry.
to fight. So it's brief, it's powerful, it's clear. You know exactly what he means. So these are some of the things that stand out. Just to have a little more fun.
We have a couple keeners who have already started this, actually.
Yes. On the other side of the word activity sheet, what are these expressions trying to say? These are fairly common expressions and cliches and idioms that we've all used, or most of us have used on a regular basis. So we'll take a few minutes and see what happens when it's written unclearly.
Okay, you guys are chatting. You guys got them all? You guys are pretty close from what I noticed going around.
Yep. If you don't have
Has ever taken your course? Sorry, had to get that in there.
Okay, the first one.
Seeing is believing.
Oh,
No.
that's different.
Not it. It's good,
That's not it.
but it's not it.
That's not it.
Look before you leap.
Look before you leap. Number 2. Right. Number 3, and you'll notice I'm not reading these things, right? I'm not taking a stab at those.
Spoil the broth.
Yeah, too many cooks spoil the broth.
Number 4?
People who live in glass houses shouldn't know broths.
You guys are getting synchronized. This is awesome.
Number 5?
Can't teach an old dog new tricks.
What about number 6?
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Whew, you guys are hot. 7.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
No playmates, Jack and Bobby.
Yep. Number 8.
Pen is mightier than the sword.
Right, the pen is mightier or more powerful than the sword. I've heard both versions. So. Number 9. Yep. And
And then you hear the, okay. Yeah.
so, and number 10.
Champagne tastes of beer budget.
Yep.
All right, so we have extra time.
Okay, so we're actually running ahead of schedule. But one of the conversations that came up when we were going around, we'll just kind of, so we'll just maybe talk about it for a sec. It's like, what am I doing? Okay, there was a question about email and what, like there are discussions about, do you use the formal letter style in the body of an email? Do you start with dear and use a punctuation? You always end with sincerely, because there are a lot of different schools of thought on that.
Shouldn't it be depending on who you're writing it to?
Yep. There are some people, and there were comments, well, my boss or the president says that's how I have to write, and so that's how I write to her. So, and everybody else, I write the way they expect. So you can have the effective communication that you need on an individual basis. It may be a matter of what your organization expects, whether there's a certain tone required as you're representing your organization, and also whether it's going to be something that's kept as a record or printed off and filed and so on. Are there any other comments that anyone? Patricia?
Just to maybe put another twist on it, when I was presenting to the Task Force on Financial Literacy, the Ombudsman for Banking of Canada came to me and said, was really upset. He said last year we had 14,000 needless complaints and he couldn't understand why. I said, did you think about plain language documentation? And the face just went, you know, if we don't understand, like the cost to our economy because of these documents is unbelievable.
Exactly. So what we're hoping now is that you'll be able to go back, take this information with you, and hope that your documents are not part of the problem, that they're setting a good example and they're part of the solution. So it saves time because it gets the job done the first time. It's sort of the nuts and bolts of clear writing. There are a lot of things that people will recommend and say you have to use a certain font and you have to use a certain style and you have to use a certain spacing, and there are a lot of rules that people will try to apply. The fact is, you need to be aware of who your audience is and what's going to be most appropriate. If you're writing to the general public, you want to make sure that you're using a font that's not a fancy scripted font that people aren't going to be, sure, they look beautiful, but you can't read them. And what's the point of looking beautiful if it's not understandable? So choose a font that's appropriate, choose a font size that's appropriate, but recognizing the space limitations on posters and documents and things like that as well. There are a lot of things that come into play. You do the best you can with what you have to work with, but always remember to check whether it's going to be clear and easily understood. Test run your documents with people outside of your office if you can. I've taken stuff home and run it by my neighbors or my spouse or my family and said, I'm not quite sure about this, what do I need to fix? And bring it outside your workplace, especially if it's something that's going to the general public, test run it with the general public.